Hello. Hello, and welcome to Keep It Colorful. My name is Jessie Robertson, and I teach 2 new acrylic painting tutorials every weekend. And today I'm excited to be offering you this tiger painting lesson. Now we're going to go over everything for painting this tiger, from drawing in basic shapes to filling in and underpainting, and then finally getting those lovely textures in the tiger's fur and in the tiger's eyes and nose. So here's a close-up. So we're really going to zone in today and try to get these aspects of the tiger's face. If you've never painted with me before, I fit all of my classes in approximately 2 to 2.5 hours. So I'm going to keep painting along at a steady pace, but I want you to pause the tutorial anytime you really want to stop and zone into a specific technique. This is time you can set aside just for you to enjoy some painting and learning a new skill. So today's class is live. Feel free to say hello. Let me know where you are painting from today. I'm painting with you in my little studio, which is in Cape Breton in Canada. It is a cold and kind of rainy day today. A little calm before a major heat spell that we've got coming up this week. So I'm enjoying this late spring cool weather. Got my tiger shirt on, ready to do our painting today. So we're going to go over our supplies in just a minute. If you have never painted with me before, all of my tutorials are free for an entire week for you to enjoy. So if you can't paint along with me when I'm live, feel free to come back anytime during the week and paint your favorite projects. I do 2 classes every weekend, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. So we have lots of fun themes to paint with. I teach my classes in acrylic, and each one is jammed with painting techniques, tips, and tricks. For today, like I said, we're going to be doing drawing, some underpainting work, and then we're really going to be working in the fine textures of the fur, eyes, and nose of this magnificent animal. So with that, I'm going to turn the camera so it's pointed down, and now we're going to go ahead and get started. I can see all of you over here. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer you along the way. I see Valerie tuning in from Toledo. Janet is tuning in from the Netherlands. Welcome. Alicia says, woot woot, it is sunny and hot in Utah. Excellent. I see Deb, hello. Okay. So here we go. Here is my desk. And I wanted to show you these 2 side by side because each one has some different attributes to it. This tiger I painted using the exact same drawing and proportions as this tiger. I really rushed my way through this one. I was very expressive with my brush strokes, and I added some leaves at the end of this tiger. This one is painted in my favorite sketchbook. So as you grab something to paint on, you can paint on paper. And when you paint on paper, you want to make sure you use a nice heavyweight paper. That's at least 140 pounds. This one is a size 9 by 12 inches. And I used some painter's tape to tape up the edges in this sketchbook. And I painted this little tiger in here. What else is in here? A little gnome and some strawberries and an owl. So I love painting in sketchbooks because it really saves a lot of time, and it can save a lot of money as well. So you're welcome to paint your tiger in a sketchbook today. We can add leaves into our tiger if we like. Lots of fun things we can do to customize our painting and make them however we want them to look. I like the leaves because a lot of time these big cats are out stalking their prey, or they're hiding their litter and looking at you. They're kind of quiet hunters. They're peering at you from the grasses or nursing their young in the grasses, and those grasses are the tiger's habitat, grasses and leaves. So we can add some of those. This tiger, I was less loosey-goosey. I was a bit more slow with how I rendered the fur. Because it's on a bigger size, I put a bit more detail into the eye to get more realism in the eye. And this one is on a stretched canvas. This is size 11 by 14 inches. So grab something to paint on. It could be a canvas, it could be paper, it could be canvas board. Use whatever you have, or if you have a preferred painting substrate, work on your preferred substrate. So something to paint on. You're also going to need a big jar of water for cleaning your brushes. And I want you to make sure you have something absorbent nearby, like this paper towel or an old rag for drying your brushes off as well. For the brushes for today's tutorial, I have them set out here. I'm going to show you them up close so you can feel free to approximate the size and shape of the bristle, of the brush bristles. So today we will be using a number 8 filbert brush, a number 6 bright brush, grab a little round brush or two, like a size 1 or a size 0. We will be using a wisp brush. This is not my wisp, this is my script liner. We will be using both, but this is a script liner brush, a long bristle. This one we really want for our whiskers. So this is a script liner. Next up, the wisp brush. I have 2 of my favorite wisp brushes here. These are brushes that have some segments cut out of them. This one has a little filbert shaped head and this one has a little flat shaped head. They're both about 1/4 of an inch, and these are really fantastic for making fast work of the fur. Another great brush for the texture of fur is a fan brush. And here I have a little acrylic fan brush made out of Taklon, and the size is 10-0. It is super small. It's smaller than my thumb. And look what happens when I wet the brush. You can see even more separation in the bristles. So it's kind of like a wisp brush on its own, but it's got that razor sharp edge and this fan shape, which can be really lovely for fitting in between some of the larger tiger stripes and doing all the extra fur that the tiger has on the outside of its facial structure, of its bone structure. We will be using a mop brush, and I use this to create soft, fuzzy texture in the background. And if you have it, a bristly fan, again for that texture, which is great for fur. The colors that we're going to use for today's tiger painting are cadmium yellow, medium hue, prism violet, and I would like to say that cadmium yellow, medium, and prism violet are the main colors that I used to create the orangish brown for the tiger. So I really want you to have these 2 colors, your prism violet and your cadmium red, medium hue. A little bit of cadmium orange, a little bit of cadmium red, some burnt umber brown, hooker's green, as well as plenty of titanium white and Mars black. Whenever I paint along in tutorials, I like to use my trusty blow dryer. This allows us to control the dry time of our paint so we can get on to the next step a little bit faster. I use this when I'm painting in my studio every day, so if you don't have a little travel size blow dryer in your painting tools, I highly suggest a little blow dryer. We're going to be doing some drawing today, and we're going to begin with the drawing on the white canvas. So I want you to grab something to draw with. I just have a regular pencil here. This is just a HB pencil, so this isn't a fancy art pencil. This is just a regular cheapy pencil. Make sure it's nice and sharp. And along with your pencil, you might want to have an eraser. Now that is it for supplies today, you guys. So with that, we're going to dive into this painting right away. And we're going to start with a little bit of drawing. Now I want to draw this on some scrap paper, and then we'll go ahead and put it on our canvas. So if you have a little bit of scrap paper and you want to follow along, I want you to go ahead and grab some now. Otherwise, you can watch this demo and we'll draw it all again together on our canvas. So I have some scrap paper here, cat themed, of course. We painted a puffin just the other day. And everything can be broken down into basic shapes, you guys. This tiger, the same. So we're going to start with one of the most basic shapes, a circle. And when you draw a circle, and if you've not drawn before, even circles can take a little finessing. So I want you to start drawing really lightly like I'm doing here. That way you can kind of see where you might need to correct your circle. And then once you feel more confident in the lines, go ahead and darken it up. We're going to begin with a circle shape like this. And I'm just going to go through these steps quickly on paper, and then we'll launch into the canvas. I like to give you an idea of where we're going with the drawing so you can see it all at least once before you put it on your canvas. And I find whenever I doodle something out first, I feel a lot more confident as it gives me time to understand the basic structure of what I am wanting to draw and then paint. So begin with a circle. Then I want you to draw a line coming through the circle vertically. And again, find that halfway point and come across horizontally like this. Looking at the horizontal line, I want you to find the halfway point between the center and the outer edge of the circle. And just draw lines straight down. Straight-ish. It doesn't have to be ruled or anything. These are just basic proportions. And it's at this halfway point too where we're going to draw little circles for the eyes. And I want you to start by drawing these circles fairly evenly. So when we're looking at an animal front on, it's really important that we have the eyes lining up. We don't want one eye up here and one down here. So start with those little circles right at that halfway point. And from there, we're going to sketch the muzzle using the lines that we drew down. So right where you drew your line down, connected to the circle, you're going to round into the bottom of your circle from the outside in, creating the bottom of the muzzle like this. And then for the little chin, we're going to drop another line down below, a little something like this. Coming up into the muzzle area, we're going to have this little line opening, kind of separating the mouth. And I want you to draw a triangle shape, kind of like an upside down triangle shape. A little something like this within these two lines here. And that's going to represent the nose. That's going to represent the nose. Now you can come up from underneath, up. And you can draw some lines coming right up to the top of the tiger's head, to the top of that circle, a little something like this. And this line here represents the outer edge of the tiger's muzzle. It represents the outer edge of the tiger's muzzle. We'll do a few more lines around the eye. So this circle sort of represents the iris, or the colored part of the tiger's eye. Now I want you to draw a line that arcs in towards the shape of the muzzle. So arc it in and down like this. And then another line, it'll have to come straight across and out a little bit from the eye like that. And you can draw another little line underneath the circle. And these lines are going to represent some of the black that we're going to put around the tiger's face. From here, I want you to do a little, almost like a V shape, just on top of the tiger's eye, again representing some of the stripes. And so we've extended a little line kind of out a little bit from the tiger's eye. I want you to draw another line up right here. That's kind of like the eyelid. All right, so the tiger's sort of brow bone is really sitting something like this here. Now, instead of a perfectly straight line, we're going to angle the tiger's face up towards the halfway point and then angle it in towards the top too. A little something like this. This creates a little bit more of the angular bone structure of the tiger. And from here, we're going to sketch out the cheekbone. So there's this shape that kind of comes in right here like this. So this is like the cheekbone of the tiger, like that. Tigers have a lot of fur that sits outside of their bone structure. So if you shaved a tiger, it would actually have a pretty skinny face, like most cats. Some cats have longer hair, some have shorter hair, but the bone structure of the tiger is like this. But then they do have a lot of extra fur. So what I want to do is extend this big kind of fluff of fur onto the outside of the tiger's face. And to get that measurement, I want you to take the distance between the eyes. So the distance from here to here. Start on the outside of the eye, and you're going to come out that same distance. So the distance between the eye, start at the outside of the eye, and you're going to extend about that same amount out on the horizontal line here, okay? So just along this horizontal line, you can measure it. So sometimes I'll even just take a pencil and I'll be like, okay, that's how far is between the eyes. Now starting on the inside corner, I'm going to come about this far out. And let's just mimic the curve at the top of the tiger's head. So we're going to match that angle coming out, and then you're just going to wrap the fur down and in towards the muzzle here, like this. And I know in the drawing phase, this looks a little bit funny, but this is how we're going to map out these shapes here, okay? And then you can just close up right on top. Just follow the same curve of the bone structure. Okay. From here, it's time to place the ears onto the tiger. So if you were to draw a line, so from that original circle, kind of all the way up like this, those ears are going to come out from the top of the tiger's head, and they'll curve in and back down approximately to this line. So here's that original circle shape, just drawing straight up, coming off the head, and then arcing back in to that line. Okay. So this is going to be the basic structure of the tiger's head. And then when we go to start filling in the stripes and the color, we're going to be following these lines. So we're going to have a lot of stripes coming in to the tiger's face. So for instance, there's this little shape, kind of looks like a wonky fork, like a bent fork or a tuning fork, following the jaw and coming in like this. And then we have a big dark stripe coming into this shape here. And this is going to kind of map out some of those longer bits of fur. So once we start using our textures and colors, we're going to work with these basic shapes to start creating the stripes in our tiger. And it won't take long working with some of these marks that we already have here to start making our tiger look more like a tiger, okay? But those basic lines are what we're going to start with. And we're going to spend a lot of time filling in the colors and the blacks into this drawing that will take it from these basic shapes to the forms of a tiger. So I'm going to just leave this drawing up here, and we're going to start to pull the tiger in to our picture plane, so your canvas or your paper. We're going to begin with a circle. And the circle, if you could see in this, sits about here. Okay. So the circle sits about here on an 11 by 14. You want to leave enough room that you can really pull out all that fluff. So my circle ended about here. So let's go ahead and sketch that in. If I were to come into the eyes, remember the eyes sit just about halfway through the circle. Let me pull this down so you can see all the color around it. The line for the eye is sitting pretty much halfway down the canvas, maybe a little bit lower than halfway. That would be more exactly half. So if you find the halfway point, if you're on an 11 by 14 like me, like this, that will be a really good starting point. Halfway, and then drop it down just about a centimeter. Now I want you to draw your circle around the line so that this cuts horizontally across the circle. So draw it really lightly for me, okay? And then when you feel like you've got a really nice clean circle shape, then you can draw a little bit darker. Start really light for me. Start really light. I want to spend lots of time getting the bones and the basic structure of the tiger in before we start filling it in. And funnily enough, the painting part takes a little bit less time than the drawing part. When we want to paint an animal where there's symmetry, when we're painting kind of both halves of the face, and we've been working on a series of half-face animals where we just focus on the textures of the fur or the plumage of the animal we're creating, we don't have to worry about symmetry. So as we pull in this full-face tiger, we're going to use some reference lines to help us create symmetry. So once you have your circle cut in half horizontally, I want you to come ahead and cut the circle in half vertically as well, like this. And then you're going to come along this line here, and you're going to find the halfway point between the center of the circle and the outside, and just put a little dot. Just put a little dot to it, or a line. And you can draw straight down. This is going to be for the muzzle and the eye. They're in line. And you can see that in the painting here. The eye and the muzzle line up. So draw those lines straight down. Let's give ourselves a couple extra reference points. That will be helpful for the ears. I want you to come straight across the top like this and the bottom. And then we'll draw those ears that come up, or the lines that come up to help us place our ears, okay? And then let's come up on the sides of our tiger here too. So we've got a little grid for ourselves. Good. Now you're going to draw the little circles at that halfway point. Coming into this line halfway, draw a little circle for me. And that's going to represent the iris, or the color part of the tiger's eye. And now we're going to use these lines that come straight down, and where they start coming out of the circle, we're going to come and do these two little shapes. Kind of looks like a little W. And you can start curving these up towards the top point here, like this. So it's like a big, kind of looks like a really long, stretched out, upside down heart shape. Sketch it on nice and lightly, not too dark. Draw a little line coming up. Into the bottom of your circle here now, and we're going to draw a little upside down, kind of squooshed triangle shape, a line straight across the top. And this represents the nose. This represents the nose. And I want you to come up on each side and extend the line up. There'll be a pretty dark line in here. Drop down the chin. And now we're going to do some of the dark part of the eye. So this really dark outline that extends out and down. So we're going to draw a line that comes kind of straight on top of the eye and out a little bit. And then you're going to arc down towards the bridge of that nose. Okay? And this line is really thick around the color part of the eye. So it kind of comes up and down, and I'm just thickening this line and bringing it out a little bit past the color part, okay? And let's do the same thing on the other side of the eye. So you can think about kind of starting at that halfway point through the eye and dropping down in towards the muzzle. And then here kind of coming straight across. And then we can thicken this line. Okay. And I want you to thicken around the outside of the tiger's eye. It's got a really dark mark. The pupil is going to be, if this bit towards the top of this circle, but just a little bit, kind of the middle, ever so slightly towards the top, just because the eye's a little bit lidded. So I want you to put a tiny little pupil, not too big. And then I want you to come down and do 2 half circles into the nose to represent the nostrils. And I want you to dip down at the top of the triangle to create the shape of the tiger's nose. Okay, like this. You've got it. You can darken a bit under the mouth as well if you like, to start creating this separation here. Good. Now there's this shape in the tiger's forehead where there's some white in the forehead, and then there's this orange kind of comes around the eye and in. So it's almost like a little diamond shape of orange inside of the nose, or the bridge of the forehead, I should say. So we're going to do a few little lines to help us plot out the orange section of the tiger's forehead. So above the black, there is a bit of white. So I want you to follow kind of right coming into the nose, do a little line on top and start coming over the eye like this. And then more into that line, angle up like this. It's kind of like a little Y shape here. Okay. And this line here represents where the orange is kind of coming in. So let's start this again, starting inside at the nose shape we have here, come up and over. And then I want you to do 2 lines angling in like this. So see how we have almost like a little diamond shape right here. Now you can lighten this guideline here. And we'll keep this line. We'll keep these lines. Okay. Let's do another line coming up. So the eye of the tiger comes out, and then do a little line up like this. In fact, if you want to give yourself a little shape for the white of the eye, you can do a little tiny shape like this, kind of coming off from that bridge of the nose and out. It's almost like 2 really soft triangle shapes like this. And that will be where some of the white part really sits in the tiger's face here. Okay. Good. Now from here, we're going to come back to this horizontal line, and I want you to angle up, creating a little bit more of bone structure for this tiger. Angle up. So here's kind of the top of the skull there. And then instead of the roundness of the circle we used, we're going to modify that shape a little bit. And I want you to just draw down like this. And that really helps establish the bone structure of the tiger. And to create even more of this like cheekbone that we've got going on here, you're going to curve the top like this. So look at those cheekbones, just starting at this halfway line and kind of following that angle. So now we've got more of a feline face, which is what we want. I'm going to sketch up a little bit more for the bridge of the nose here. Before we start to widen out for that really fluffy fur along the side of the tiger's face. Now remember, we're going to take the distance between the eyes, and we're going to then start right at the outside of the circle of the eye here. And this is how far out that we want to extend that fur. So I might measure it on my pencil. So here's that width. It goes from the tip of my pencil to my finger there. So it's going to come all the way out to here. It's like plop, 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 plop. And then let's start shaping this up. Come to the top of this line here, and it's going to pinch in. So we're basically following this curve and extending it out, or this angle, I should say here, extending it out to here. All right. And then the basic shape of this is going to come down and in towards the mouth. So maybe a little bit straight and then curved under like this. This is all going to get fluffed up when we use our texturizing brushes. So remember, if this looks funny, it's because we're just blocking out the shape and there's no texture. So it's basically just this big mass. But remember, what this represents is this whole band of fur right here outside of that cheekbone, okay? All right, you've got this. Now we're going to extend the top of the head up a little bit, just following the same line, and we're going to close up the shape over top of the tiger's bone structure. We have just a couple more basic shapes. Then we're going to pull in some lines for the stripes before we start filling it in. So for those ears, you guys, for those ears, I want you to come basically from where the top of the head ended here, bring that line up, and you're going to curve it in, remember, so it hits this guideline that we drew up like this. And if you're wondering how tall to make your tiger's ears, we've got these little white shapes inside of the head here to represent the white of the eye. That's about the same length as the tiger's ears. So you see, if I pinch this little white bit here with my fingers, or I'll use a pencil. So if I pinch that little white bit, that's the same length as those ears. And if we kind of took that line and curved it in, it could almost see another point of reference you could use as it kind of lines up with the, if you were to keep pulling it in, it kind of lines up with the outside of those eyes there, or you can use this guideline, which comes straight up. So starting about here at the where the face becomes an angle to flat across the top, come out and then in to this guideline that we put here. And we're going to add a few more details to refine the shape, but for now, this is how we're going to begin. I want you to draw a little line for the tiger's back, right here, pretty much just coming straight across. And then we see a little bit of the body in here as well. And the body, you're going to come straight down from this line. And this is the leg. I want you to do another line coming up on a little bit of an angle and in towards the jaw, like this, kind of like a little triangle. So now we don't have so much of just a floating head. You can see that these are the legs that are coming out from the tiger. And now it's time to start having some fun and blocking in the stripes, at least some of the basic stripes. So we've already darkened around the eye of the tiger. We've already darkened around the eye of the tiger. Now let's add another stripe right below the eye here. The little black one, just leave a little bit of a white space. And then I want you to do a little line right below each of the eyes, like this. And next we're going to come to the stripe that's coming out from the eye. I like to focus on the stripes around the eyes. Again, it's such a focal point into any feline's face, but especially a tiger where the stripes add all of that extra detail around the eye. So we're going to come straight out from the eye here. And then we're going to have a little stripe. And I'm just using the side of my pencil, okay? And I'm going to widen this little stripe coming up along the edge of the face here. And almost coming out towards the cheekbone like this. So coming out from the eye and then just extending this up almost along that ridge of the white part we have here. And then it kind of curls along down into the cheekbone. Now all tigers have different stripes, so you guys, I don't want you to stress too much if your lines aren't exactly the same as mine. Focus more on symmetrical-ish and having them kind of end roughly at the same spot. Into the cheekbone, we're going to take this little stripe here and we're going to wrap it around so it's kind of like a little C shape into the face. And then to finish off the cheek section, I have just a couple little stripes kind of pointing up and in towards the eye, like this. I want to spend lots of time getting this drawing section right, so I don't want you to rush this part of the painting. Now we're going to get into, so we've got a lot of these little detail lines coming up and into the cheek. So here's that little kind of U shape under the eye like this, and then the little kind of shapes coming in towards the eye, these little stripes here. So now we're going to do this stripe that kind of comes along, getting to the border of the bone structure of the tiger and into those loosey-goosey hairs. So we're going to have a little stripe that's going to come basically along the cheekbone at the bottom. But I want you to come, so here's the cheekbone, start in the muzzle there. Then you can kind of come out a little bit. And I want you to start coming up the side of the face and then create almost like a little hook below. Another way of thinking about that is here's the cheekbone. You can do a little line that comes out of the cheekbone like this and then hook that like a U shape in towards the muzzle. And then you're just going to darken this line, not coming up all the way to the ear, but just kind of following that inside diagonal of the tiger's face like this. From here, we only have one more big stripe, and that's this outer stripe here. We just did these two, kind of look at where they sit in relation to the muzzle. They kind of sit at the muzzle or kind of on top of where the muzzle ends, because our final stripe is going to be in kind of the middle of this big shape here. And you can start really lightly. You can use the side of your pencil. We're going to kind of come down a bit more towards the opening of the mouth, be up the side of the face a bit more, and then in towards the ear. Okay. Like this. So this is kind of some darkness coming in towards the mouth. That's kind of coming along the ear shape here. And then it's going to get a little bit bigger. You can even kind of come a bit more straight down the side of the face before wrapping in towards the muzzle. And I might pull another little line on top. So we really want these, a little bit of orange hair on the other side of this stripe, right? So this is where those wispy lines are going to be. Okay. So this is, we want a little more orange hair on top of the ear, and then wispy, wispy, wispy. I like to do a few stripes into the forehead, just with some basic lines in the drawing. And the drawing doesn't have to be perfect, you guys. The drawing is there so that we can see if the stripes look good and that we have some symmetry in the face. We're going to be painting this in with the black. So don't worry if your pencil is messy, if things look off. This is your opportunity to tweak those basic shapes. So I needed to bring this line up on top of the ear here, because that represents this little bit of orange fluff on top of my tiger stripe. So here we're just roughing things in, okay? We've got some stripes in the forehead, and they really kind of start leading up into the forehead, and with some really almost triangle or arrow type shapes into the forehead, and then the stripes sort of flatten out a little bit more at the top. And I would say I have 1, 2, 3, about 4 stripes into the forehead here. So take your pencil, you can draw really, really lightly, and then we can refine the shapes as we go. All right. So I want to do on top of my eyelid here, maybe a little, make this stripe a little bit bigger. I'm going to have it kind of angle up a little bit on each side. And then I'm going to do a little stripe that's going to angle in and start creating that kind of arrows pointing up like this. And then just below these, right in the inside, okay, we've got that line kind of coming through the center. We're going to have this little kind of arrow shape like this. And then that's the shape here. On top of that, it's almost like an upside down triangle. And then maybe a few more lines angling down. And these kind of overlap and come into the white part, okay? Now more towards the top of the head, so these shapes are going to start to flatten out a little bit. I might have one more little stripe here, here, and then I'm going to pull one little stripe across. And if you only have room for one, that's fine. I wonder if I can wiggle in one more of these little flat stripes up there. Let's do a little bit of shaping for the ears, and we'll pick some stripes for the body, and then we're going to start filling this in. So for the ear, I want you to draw a little line like this, sort of the fur part of the ear, and then do a little flap like this. So this little flap there. Same thing on the other side. This represents kind of the fur part of the ear where it connects to the head. And then draw a little flap in, just like this. And that's all. We have some stripes on the legs. This is a really shadowy part of the tiger, but we want it to look like it's connected to its body, even though we have more saturation and highlights more, a broader range of values in the face, a broader range of lights, midtones, and darks. So this is all a lot darker and not as saturated because the light's obviously hitting the face and we want most of the detail there, but we still see these stripes. So let's pull some stripes into the leg. So they're kind of wrapping around the leg. So we might have some stripes kind of curving around the top of the leg, kind of like right under the chin, like this. And then maybe we have another little stripe coming up the side of the leg here. And then maybe one more coming down. And on the other side too, coming up. Then maybe one more coming down. Here's the outside of the base shape here. I have a little stripe or two coming down the back as well. So this is rounding out the back of the tiger. So I want you to take your time and get your drawing looking the way you like it. And don't be afraid to kind of, if you really love painting wildlife and you want to dedicate more of your painting practice to working towards more realistic wildlife, you've got to just start, and don't be afraid to have it look a little bit wonky. Don't be afraid to paint a little bit faster and more loose until you start to get the basic shapes a little bit more. And both of these are lovely tigers. My eyes are a little bit too big to be super realistic in this version, but I like this version. I like how loose it is. I like the colors and the leaves. But you can keep working towards more abstraction and stylization, or a little bit more towards realism, just by doing subtle tweaks. And you can only get there if you keep practicing, keep sketching the subjects that you love, keep practicing painting them. And even if your painting didn't turn out exactly as you envisioned it, it's only going to take a few more times for you to keep working at it until it gets there. So I want you to hang in there with me today. We're going to go through all of the steps until we have ourselves a tiger. And I want to show you the whole process from this line drawing here to building up all of the fur. So spend your time on this. Next up, step 2 is going to be blocking out the blacks. So we're going to take a little bit of our black, squirt it out, and then we're going to add water to this black. My water is right here. So I'm going to take a little kind of like a large toothpaste size dollop. And I'm going to drip in water until it's a little bit more like an ink consistency. So it's really fluid, which will help it go around curves. And we need fluid paint to achieve really thin lines. Now I want you to take a small brush, like a 0 round or a 1 round, and let's start going around some of these finer details. I always love starting with the eye, and I've got a little 0 round here with my liquidy black on there. And we want to start darkening around the eye. Do a little black into the pupil. Now in my own painting practice, I really love a stylized approach to painting. Realism is so fascinating, but I like to inject a little bit more of my own kind of creativity or whimsy into my paintings. So when I did portraits, I always did these really weird line work over top of my portraits, and wanting to make them kind of use color and line to make things express things that words could not. My foundation in drawing helped me to paint things from my imagination easier. So if you're someone that wants to paint things that you see in your head, a foundation in realistic drawing can help you paint things that are not so realistic. And that's a fun thing about painting, is all the different things that we can learn. The more of a vocabulary we have and the more freedom we have to express ourselves in a visual sense. We're going to come around all of these stripes, and you can use this round brush, and they don't have to be perfectly straight lines because these are going to eventually represent stripes that are in fur, or that is what they represent. You can make these lines a little bit more fuzzy and not so straight. Another brush you can use to help this is a wisp brush, or a brush that has some segments cut out of it. So if I dip this brush into the runny paint, I can easily come into my stripes, and I can use all sides of the wisp brush. If I use the flat part of a wisp brush like this, I can get a straight line. And if I use the part where the bristles are separated, I can get a fuzzy line like this. And you can do a really light tap along the outside of the muzzle. coming over your stripes. Above the eye, I'm going to do a little stripe here. And then on this kind of little diamond shape that we have, I'm going to come into that shape, do a little black like this, and then we can have some more smaller stripes, kind of leading up into these little V shapes here. I might push hard and then light, hard and then light. Swoop, swoop. And then let's come around our ears. One of my little stripes is going to kind of come from the ear, almost like a little M shape into the forehead. The stripes at the top of the forehead, of course, are going to start to get a little bit smaller and a little bit flatter. You can take some black inside of the ear. Just remember where the outside of your face is. Actually, if we want to do these last little stripes first, you can use your fan brush. We've got this big stripe that comes up around the side of the face here. So I'm going to take my little fan brush, and this leads right in towards the mouth and gets a bit bigger down below. And then it's going to come right up alongside the ear here. Okay, I want to make sure we've got a little bit of fur on top of the ear, so an orange stripe in between. And then once you have that, you can kind of pull some black inside the center of the ear. And we can use this little fan brush, and I like to kind of just lightly pull in and out to get that wispy quality to the fur that's going to come along and then down. And it's really going to end right where the mouth closes up here. Okay, so it does kind of really flatten out down here along the outside of the face. we've got this big old stripe. And we have the opening of the legs. So this line kind of comes up on an angle towards the center of the chin. And then we have some stripes coming down. We're getting into the last bit of detail here, into the nose. So I want you to take a little round brush, like a 0 round or a 1 round. Make sure you still have some of your runny black. And I want you to do a nice dark line underneath your nose. It's a little line that comes up into the bottom of the nose. And then some nostrils. Do a little tapped line into the nose. We have some lines coming into the muzzle of the tiger. And they all kind of come in towards the center here. So we're going to have a line that's a little bit bigger towards the outside, coming down like this. And then one at the top. And then there's 2 more that kind of follow this sort of path. They kind of come up and in. And you can do little dots. They're going to get a little bit, or taps. It can be kind of a messy line. Okay. So the basic shape they're going to follow is in like this. Like those 3, and then a couple of big taps. They're going to be bigger towards the outside of the shape, and they're going to get smaller towards the inside. And once we have the black on, we are done with the drawing details, and now we're going to start painting this tiger in. And the first thing we're going to do is apply a sepia toned colored ground all over this black outline. So we need to let this dry. I'm going to grab my little travel size blow dryer, turn it on hot, and I'm going to give this a blast. So here we go. It's really important that the black is thoroughly dry because we're going to apply a colored ground over top of this black outline. So make sure it's nice and dry. If you have some really, really dark pencil, you might want to have an eraser and just lighten some of those lines. Whew. Some wet black there. To make our colored ground, we're going to create a homemade sepia color using our cadmium yellow and our purple. So you're going to start with some yellow and squeeze out some of your prism violet. I want you to start adding your prism violet slowly to your yellow so you can see what a beautiful warm orangish brown that this color makes. So I'm going to start with this tiny little scoop of the prism violet on my number 6 bright brush. I'm going to mix this one little bit into this blob of yellow, and it makes a beautiful warm golden sepia color. I want this to be more of a cool brown color, so I'm going to add more purple until it's more of a dark brown color, cooler, darker brown color. I mean, it will still be warm because of the yellow, but now we have more of a dark brown color. And when you're ready, we can start applying this right over top of the black. This is one of my favorite things about acrylic is you can apply your colored ground over top of a drawing or sketch. You can't quite get this with oil paint, so this is one of my favorite bonuses of the acrylic medium. Now, you can grab a larger brush like your number 8 filbert. No need to add water. Just take big dollops of paint and start covering the whole thing. Don't worry, it will dry see-through so that we can see the drawing. And this basically applies an entire coat of our medium value color, which makes blocking in the details easier because we just have to focus on the shadows and the highlights. We already have some blacks in there. Using a colored ground is a really, really fabulous way to cover a lot of area quickly. And this is in fact a classical painting technique, applying a colored ground. Whatever colored ground you do is going to show through the final painting. So typically when you choose a color, you pick one that represents one of the main colors of your subject, or in a landscape, like the time of day, like if it's golden hour, you'd use a golden underpainting, or you could use an earthy green. If it's a vibrant kind of warm sunset, you could use like a red ochre. So here we're using one of the shadow colors of our tiger, so we really just have to block in those highlights. Grab large dollops of your color and just spread it all around. And if you run out of color, you can just mix more as you go, which is what I'm doing here. I'm working on a canvas, so I am applying some of this colored ground to the edges of my canvas as well. Take your time and apply a thin coat of this all over. When you're finished this step of the painting, it's time for another dry break. If you have paint on your palette and you're worried about it drying out, then you can take a spray bottle on the fine mist setting and you can use this to lightly mist your paints whenever it looks like they're getting a little bit too dry. Just a really light sprinkling on the top of your paints, and I typically go in about every 15 minutes and just give it a light misting. Now it's time to dry our colored ground. You can turn a little blow dryer on hot and move it all around. Here we go. I want you to make sure that your ground is covering the entire background and then it's nice and dry. The next step of this painting is pulling in the background color. We want to pull in the background color so that we can layer the fur over top of it. For my background color, I chose a dark grayish green value. So I want you to squeeze out a little bit of your burnt umber brown. And some green. I've got my Hooker's green here. And squeeze out a little bit of white too. Take your number 6 bright brush and take some green and slowly add brown to it until you have kind of a really deep olive green color. And if I rub this out, you can really see the undertone. And then you can start applying this to the background of your painting. Coming all around the ears. Now try adding a little bit of white to some of your brownish green. And you can pull in a few little dollops of some of a lighter greeny gray here and there. And then I like to take a mop brush before it dries. Dry or just lightly dampened. And then I don't want it to look patchy, so I'm going to take my mop brush and gently feather this together. If I were to scrub this down, I could even lift some color to get some of those warm orange spots. Excellent. I'm going to take my spray bottle and I'm going to mist my colors so they stay nice and hydrated, because we will be using these colors again. And now it's time to get into the layering of the tiger. We're going to start with some of the darker values because we need them to be dark enough to allow the separation of the highlights to look like fur. So in order for this to look fuzzy, we have to have the darker gray underneath so that the white can show up. Same in the muzzle. The white just looks really solid unless you have something darker. So this started as a darker orange, and you can still see little bits of that original underpainting shining through. So let's start to mix up some of the colors for the fur of our tiger. Starting with those shadowy colors, which is a gray, a range of grays. We want kind of a dark, medium, and a light gray color. So rinse off your number 6 bright brush. I see a question from Valerie who asks, have you ever had your paint separate? I poured out my Prism Violet and a lot of the clear stuff came out, then bits of color, and I can't get them to mix back together. Yeah, really old paint can definitely separate. And unfortunately, if it's that separated, there's not much that you can do about it. I would definitely, if you just bought it, see if you can get a refund for the color, because it shouldn't be separated right off the shelf like that. Sometimes if it's just a little bit separated, that means the acrylic polymer has separated from the pigment. It can be mixed together, but most often than not, it will give you kind of like chunks of the pigment in the paint. So I've had just a few tubes like that, and I tend to toss them. Other times I have paint that I inherited from my mentor who had these tubes for decades, and I still have them and they don't separate. So probably things like freezing, I know, can separate your acrylic paint as well. I had that happen to some of my paints. Some of the bottles froze and separated, others froze and they didn't separate. So definitely take that back for a refund if it's a new bottle. We're going to mix the grays for the stripes of the tiger. So take some white and just the tiniest tip into some black to mix a light gray color. And we can also mix more of a medium gray like this. Medium kind of darker gray color. And we're going to use these light, medium, and dark grays for the underpainting for our fur. For some of the bigger areas, I like to use my little mini 10-0 fan. That's this one here. And I'm going to come into some paint, tap my brush off so there's not too much paint on it to start. And I'm going to do this area. Now you can use the whole fat part of your fan brush with just a little bit of paint. So see how it's not gobbed on? And you can kind of start pulling in the direction that these hairs come out here. And this will give you kind of a big fat wisps because we're using the whole fat part of the fan brush. You can also turn the fan brush. So instead of using the fat part like this, you can turn it up so it's 90 degrees. So it's the long skinny way. Okay. And then you can kind of just come in and out, or even just out. Arc some hairs up and some hairs down. Okay, so the fat part will cover a lot of area. The 90 degrees is going to give you more of an edge to play with, okay? So anywhere that you see white in the tiger's face, you can start by adding gray into the underpainting. Stephanie just said, I absolutely love your live tutorials, Jessie. It's really helping me become a better painter. That's really great, Stephanie. I'm so happy that you are enjoying the classes and painting up a storm. Let's keep coming into these grays anywhere you see the white. There's a little some on the stripes under here. Did here. And I'm going to take some of this darkest gray in between my black stripes. Letting a little bit of the orange show through on the outside of the legs. The other brush that's really wonderful for painting in the fur is going to be your wisp brush. So this is great when we get up into some of the smaller areas. So I'm going to stick with this dark gray. And I'm going to start pulling it into the ear. You can kind of come around the black, if you like, around the outer edge of your ear first. I lost a bit of my shape painting in the background. Okay, so there's the outer edge of the ear. And then we're going to take some of this gray into the inside of the ear. And leave it black right in the middle. And I'm just using the wisp brush so that when I make marks, it's got that kind of fluffy texture. The hairs are little wispy hairs inside of the feline ears. If you have a cat at home, they've got lots of hair in their little ears. curling up this way. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a lighter gray. And I'm going to pull a few wisps over top. Still not white, just a little bit of this lighter gray. You can add a little water to your paint to help it flow. I'm going to use this little whisk brush here. Let's take one of our medium grays. Actually, let's get into our lightest gray here. And I want to come into the white parts around the eye. So we've got this little white stripe, and you can just tap the color in. We've got this white part under the tiger's eye here. And another stripe over top of the blacks of the eye. And remember, we've got this area like this, where we have quite a bit of the white color. Coming right over the underpainting. So anything we put on here in a light color is going to really stick out like a sore thumb, but it will start integrating with the light tiger colors as well. So you want to block in some of these lights around the eye. And if you remember those two lines that we had kind of coming like this, our white's really going to start to peter out around there. I want you to take some of your darker gray color under the chin, moving your way out to your lighter gray. And you can use your little whisk brush I'm going to just tap into this gray to blend it in. Moving to the lighter gray and using that whisk brush and pulling down. Okay, good. From here, I want us to start mixing up some of the colors for the oranges in the tiger's face. So squeeze out a little bit of orange and squeeze out a little bit of red, and make sure you have lots of your yellow and purple. So we want to have a dark and a medium and a light value of our orange, the same way we did with our grays. So for the darkest color, you're going to start with a primarily purple mix with just a little bit of yellow. So you're going to have a really, really dark color. You can even add a bit of burnt umber brown and a little bit of red to this color as well. So it should look like a dark reddish brown color. For our medium color, we're going to take some Prism Violet and mix it with some yellow. So we have kind of a warm sepia brown color. You can add the tiniest little bit of your cadmium orange to this color. A little more yellow will make this a lighter color yet. And for the lightest color, we're going to take some white into this really warm color here. It should look like a light, warm, yellowy color. So you want this range, and you can also mix in between values. So if we take some of our darkest color and add a bit of yellow and orange to it, we'll get an in-between value. But here we've got a nice range of dark to light golden colors for the tiger. I want us to come centrally in to the face around the eye. Notice where the lights start to hit on the outside of the face towards the whites, and it really starts to get quite a bit darker in towards the nose. I like tapping with these little whisk brushes to help get some of the textures in here. And even if you're going over your background with a similar color, I still like to tap in the texture. We want to start pulling our brush strokes in the direction that the fur is going. So I'm going to take some of my darkest color, that almost brownish purple color, and I'm going to tap it on the outside of the nose, on the sides of the muzzle, up in towards the eye. And then a little bit. And if you tap with the tip of a whisk brush, it creates a really fun texture. The fur on the forehead or the nose of an animal is often really tiny. I'm going to go into a color that's just a little bit lighter. Oops. Tapping down towards the nose. And then I'm going to get into a color, one of my lighter colors here. And I'm going to tap just a little bit on top of the nose. And I want to start just a little paint on my brush. Gently pulling some of the light color up. I'm tapping here for these little tiny hairs. You can even take a tiny little bit of pure white on the tip of your whisk brush. As long as you can see separation in the bristles, it's all good. You can tap across the bridge of the nose. As long as you can see little separation in the strokes, you're going to get that look of really tiny fur. I want you to pick a color that's just a little bit lighter than the background brown for coming in between some of these stripes. I might go for this color here. And I'm going to come in between some of these stripes. Getting a little lighter. The fur at the top of the head is moving up in this direction. So when you start filling in these stripes, you can start pulling in little brush strokes kind of coming up. So we're going to start to lighten in between the stripes. And you can pull some of your light orangey color, integrating it into the fur on the outside of the face too. Towards the top of the forehead, I'm going to go for a little bit of a medium orange. And coming into the sides of the face, I'm going to start with one of my darker colors, and I'm going to pull little strokes. Then I can get a color that's a little bit lighter. Okay. First with the darker color and then to this lighter golden color. I like to take some orange into the outer edge of my ears. Although if your black is still really wet, and mine is, we'll wait till that dries. I want to come into the eyes here. They're the only thing that don't really have their proper color on them yet. So let's take some brownish green. It's kind of like a brownish greenish yellow, and start pulling in the color into the eyes. Getting the shadow on top of the tiger's eye is really important to getting it to glow. So darker on top and getting a little bit lighter towards the bottom. So let's mix up our color. You'll want to have some green, some yellow, and some brown, and even some of these warm golden colors. For the shadow color, I actually just use some of the same greenish brown. So brown and green to make that really, really dark olive green. And then to warm it up a little bit, I actually added some of our homemade tiger color, one of the darker colors. It should look like kind of a brownish olive green. For the medium color, I took a little bit of one of the lighter tiger colors, and I added a bit more yellow and a little bit of green. For the lightest color, take some of your medium color and add some white to it. So here's my range of colors. It's sort of a greenish brown, and you'll find tigers with more golden brown eyes or more on the green side. So there can be a range of colors. Most importantly, you want to have a dark a medium, and a light color. So I want you to take your dark brownish green color around the pupil and into the top of the eye. And I'm just tapping this in with my 0 round brush. Around the pupil and into the top of the eye. Then I want you to take your medium color, your greenish brown, and start tapping into the lower part of the eye. And it's okay to have some of your background color show through here, of course. So my medium color is kind of just this warm, greeny brown. And just tapping it up and into the dark color. So you kind of have this two-tone effect. Rinse off your brush and come into your highlight color. And again, I'm just using this light kind of yellowy green. And I want you to come around the outer edge of the eye really carefully. And then I want you to tap this in towards the pupil. I'm going to rinse off my brush and come back into some of my medium color so I can kind of do a bit more of a transition. You can bring in more of your dark color if you need to. You should get a nice glow to the eye. If you lost your pupil a bit like me, rinse off your brush, go into some plain black, and you can tap your pupil back in there. And now I want you to stick with that 0 round brush and grab some of your runny black. I want you to come into the black around the eye. It will have lightened when we put on our colored ground. So go around the black of the eye, and it really does make a huge difference, this second coat of black. Don't forget to add the water in there to help it flow. Now, once you've come around the black in the eye, we still have the highlight to do in the eye, but I like to tweak some of the black stripes in the face, especially in the ones around the eye. So grab a little whisk brush like this, go into some runny black, and let's accentuate some of the little stripes, especially the ones in the forehead and around the eye. Now, one thing that can be really fun to do, and a way to make these look really fuzzy, is instead of just doing a solid stripe, you can start to work with the fact that we went over the black with the brown, so it's a little bit dulled out, to create more of a furry texture. So if I come into this stripe with my whisk brush, or even like a little flat brush, and I don't do it solid, you see how it's starting to look a bit more furry. So you can do a little bit of a broken line to keep working with that furry texture. Now, while we're waiting for the eyes to dry so we can give them a nice bright white highlight to really make them pop, let's get into the lower area of our muzzle. Grab a small whisk brush. I'm going to start coming down with a little bit of this lighter orange color. I'm just going to tap it underneath the shadowy part of the nose. And kind of in between some of these black parts of the muzzle. I do it first in the orange and then in the white. Or actually, let's do our light gray color. Actually, let's go into our medium gray color underneath because it's a bit more shadowy down below. So I'm just holding my brush 90 degrees so that I can lightly tap it in here. The darker gray on the bottom. And then the lighter gray, the almost pure whitish gray on top. And you can use some of your orangish colors to have this gradually come from that really light color to the really dark color on the side of the muzzle. And I'm lightening some of the stripes in the face here, just a little bit lighter, creating some gaps so the color below shows through. The nose of the tiger is a pinkish brown color. So I take some red and I mix some burnt umber brown and then some white. I'm going to add a little bit of my orange to this color too. So we have kind of an orangish pink. Start with a darker pink and fill in the nose. Then mix some white into your color. So you've got a lighter version of that color. And I want you to tap a little highlight into the top of the nose, kind of just inside the top of the nose. You can do one more highlight that's even brighter. Okay, good. Now I want to add a few nice white highlights into the tiger, into above the where we have our grays. So above the eye here and into the side of the face. I don't want it so white around the hair on the side that we can't see our whiskers. And I'm going to continue using the whisk brush and the fan brush to achieve some of these fur-like textures. Add a bit of water to your paint and tap off your whisk brush. So it's not gobbed up with paint. And we can come into the face. So I'm just doing a really light touch here. Kind of pulling my brush in the direction of the fur. And everything on the inside of these little lines that we put here to mark off where the color part and white part ends. You can use the brush, not just this way to get these streaks, but if you turn it up 90, you can just pull out some basic wispy shapes, just like it was a regular flat brush, okay? So just lightening a little bit. This is my lightest gray. with water in it and then tapping off that brush. I'm going to tap on top of the nose here too, in the fur. A little lighter in the muzzle, especially along the lower part of the nose. Some fur on the outside of the face here. A few little bits of fur into the bottom of the chin. We can get a little black right under the mouth here too. If you have your little 0 round brush, I like to add some of these details back into the muzzle just in case you went over it. The little whisk brush, they're small, but they can be a little bit hard to maneuver. So you can just tap some of these little, this is kind of where the whiskers come out of the muzzle. Little taps in those lines that come in towards the center, some little taps of the black under the mouth, okay? I want us to get some whites into the eye and into the outside of the ears, but we're really getting down to those final tweaky deakies here. So from here on out, it's really all about finessing. Grab your 0 round brush, go into some pure white and tap it so there's just a little bit of white on your brush. We're going to come along the top of the eye. I like to do a little line and a dot. A little line and then a dot. Now the whisk brush makes excellent hair texture, but so does just a little round brush. So if you ever want to do some individual hairs, you're going to use your runny white, and then you can really just pull out little individual hairs. So I'm going to do a few at the bottom of the chin here. Let's come up into our ear as well with some of our lighter grays. along the outer edge. Hairs curving up and into the ear, and then some much smaller hairs along the outside of the ear. The final part of this tiger painting is going to be just playing with these values until we get them where we like. I often like to integrate some of these lighter oranges around the white part of the tiger's face and even pull some subtle hairs and highlights down into the body of the tiger. For the body of the tiger, because it's a larger area, we can play with our bristly fan brush. So I'm going to take a gray that's just a little bit lighter than the gray that I have in here. And just using the very edge of this brush, pulling some little taps in the direction that these hairs go. This is like the side of the leg here. And then into some of a darker orange. You can use some of a lighter tiger color on the outside of this leg here. The bristly fan is larger, and as such, it can be a little bit harder to control, but it does make really, really beautiful, soft, fuzzy textures. And one way that you can use that brush is to just load the tip of it. So I'm going to rinse this off, the orange, and show you what I mean. So if we take this big fan brush into some of these, say, medium grays, but I just really load the tip and make sure it's not super full of color, then I can use just the edge or even into some of these final lighter highlights, just a little bit of paint. You're going to want to tap off a lot of the paint. So again, loading just the tip of a fan brush, we can even come up and do some the little hairs inside the ear. We're putting a little bit of that orange body color into the side of the ear that's connecting into the head. Now it's time to add some whiskers into our tiger. This is what the script liner brush is really amazing at. I want you to take some water into a small amount of white and make your paint really, really fluid. I'm going to put the tip of my brush on a paper towel just so it doesn't drip onto my canvas when I go to make one of these whiskers. And you can practice on the side of your canvas, but I want you to be able to make a really, really thin line with some really light pressure, okay? Make sure you can get a thin line like this if you've never used this brush before you put it onto your tiger. And then we're gonna come off of here and we're gonna go whoop, whoop. And we're gonna fill in some whiskers. You're gonna wanna load your brush again, maybe even adding more water. Tap the tip onto a napkin. Oops, ooh, that is a big whisker. You can use this for some final hair details as well. Some little hairs above the eyebrows or into those ears. Now I'll show you how you can fix a big whisker. As long as the background is dry, take a clean brush with a nice firm edge, dampen it, and then you just kind of scrape it off or thin it out. Now I want you to sit back and see if there's any last minute tweaks that you want to add to your painting. When you feel like you're finished, you can sit back, relax, and roll your shoulders because you just finished painting a portrait of a tiger. It's always amazing how subtle curves in the eye can really indicate personality of the face of an animal or a person. So this guy's, I don't know, I think this one looks a little more cute, a little bit more round. This one's a little bit more elegant, kind of like a Egyptian cat or a Bengal tiger. So subtle shifts in the way we place things is really going to give our big cats a lot of personality. These full face tutorials of animals are my most requested class from you. So I hope you enjoyed painting this tiger with me today. We covered a lot of drawing and more advanced techniques. So I want you to sit back and be proud of what you have accomplished today, no matter where you are in your painting journey. If you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced painter, I'm so happy that you showed up today to do a little bit of painting. I'm going to hang out to see if you have any last minute questions for me, and I want to show you some of the fun things that we have coming up. All right, so that is it. You have created a portrait of a tiger. I absolutely love cats and capturing the essence of an animal in painting form. So I hope you enjoyed painting this tiger with me as well. I would love to get to see your finished version of your tiger. If you haven't already joined, I've created a private Facebook sharing group. I create albums for every single painting that we do. So you can join the group, share your painting, and take a peek at what other artists have done with their tigers as well. Feel free to ask me any questions here in the comments. You can also ask me questions in our group. I check in on the group every day, usually several times a day. Vicky says, fabulous, Jessie. She's having difficulty with her eye. Vicky, I hope you feel better soon and can do a little bit of painting when your eye is on the mend. Stephanie said, I can't wait to see what's in tomorrow's class. Tomorrow we are going to be painting a Milky Way camping scene. Irina says, thank you very much for the wonderful session. And Stephanie said, I love the wildlife and nature scenes. Me too. I see Patricia there. Hello. All right, you guys. So I don't see any questions popping up. So let's get into what is coming up. I wanted to remind you that this class is free all week long. So feel free to come back, paint it in segments. And if you would like a copy of this class to keep beyond the week that it's free, you can tip to own a copy to keep forever for just $5. And those classes are yours for lifetime access. I also have a subscription called Kick Academy. It's $15 a month, and this gives you unlimited access to over 500 tutorials, including this tiger. So when you're part of Kick Academy, you'll get this tiger lesson and all of the paintings on my wall. And behind me, we do palette knife classes, animal paintings, bird paintings, fun seasonal things like gnomes, cute things to celebrate holidays, realistic landscapes, still life painting. So I love breaking painting into bite-sized chunks that you can finish a painting in an afternoon or a few days if you like to break things up, because the more you paint, the more you practice drawing, the more you practice layering, the more you practice mixing colors, the more it's going to sink in and you're going to get more familiar with your medium, how it behaves, how it layers, how brushes are used. And people ask me all the time, I want to know everything all at once. What works well together? What medium does this? And honestly, when you break these tutorials, come and show up for some of these weekend tutorials with me, you're going to have all of those questions answered in bite-sized bits of information. Plus, we like to have lots of fun along the way. So feel free to check out some of my upcoming classes. If you love our classes, then you can go ahead and subscribe to Kick Academy as well. So we are in the month of June and we have some paintings coming up to celebrate. We are going to be painting a Milky Way camping scene. So here we're going to really focus on how to paint that glowing tent, the night sky, and of course the Milky Way. We're going to be using a big fat decorator's brush, which is one of my favorite tools for painting outer space and the night sky. After that, we're going to paint a fun seasonal painting. It's June, which means it is beach season. It's time to hunt for seashells and explore all of the nautical treasures. Coming up later this month, we're going to do another palette knife painting class using palette knives. This is cornflowers at golden hour. So we're really going to work on capturing light and creating a beautiful floral landscape using only our palette knives. After that, we're going to be painting a jewel tone tropical scene with some dolphins in these beautiful purple hues. We've got another realistic animal coming up. We're going to be painting an eagle just in time for the 4th of July for our American friends. We love eagles here too in Cape Breton. When eagles were at risk of becoming extinct due to pesticide use, Cape Breton is one of the spots where they did an eagle rehabilitation program and they were able to regenerate a lot of eagles or to populate their species here where I live. Just lovely. I saw an eagle for my first time when I moved here about 4 years ago. And to this day, every time Dawn and I see an eagle, that's my hubby and I, we just stop and go, eagle! They're just so amazing. Okay. Oh, we're going to paint a juicy watermelon drink theme. This matches a painting we just did of lemonade. So a really fun twist on a still life with a picnic scene and these really gorgeous colors. This one utilizes some neon pink and layering to get the ice, to get the glass, and to get that light, that low sunset light shining through. And when we're painting, aren't we always, in a sense, trying to capture light? All right, so that's what I wanted to show you for what is coming up. Again, I want to suggest you can join our Facebook group and there you can share your paintings, take a peek at what other artists have done there as well. I post our upcoming tutorials in the group and you can meet other artists working on these projects as well. Bruce says, I recommend the Kick Academy. I work in an elementary school and summer's about to start. I'm looking forward to going back and completing the different seasonal series. I love your teaching, Jessie. I'm going to touch up my tiger before posting. Ruth, I can't wait to see your tiger and I'm happy that your summer vacation is almost here and you can dedicate more time for your vocations. Summer is a bit of a time of rest for me as well, as winter and autumn are my busy seasons. So I know it's always an exciting time. I'm happy you're enjoying the Kick Academy. And for those of you who don't know, we do a lot of 4-season series here where we paint the same object or theme in different seasons. So we have some of these really fun collections and I really love painting to celebrate the season, the colors of spring and early summer, which are so green. You've got a lot of rain coming in, blossoming trees, heading into summer where the green starts to turn to gold, things heat up, got a lot of blue sky, puffy clouds. And then when summer transitions into autumn and those hints of color, it's so exciting, the seasons. And I've been thinking about life recently and I'm 40, so I'm counting like how many autumns do I have left? And it helps me put into perspective how precious the seasons are, how precious time is, how beautiful everything around us is. And I know if you're out there watching, you love celebrating beauty, the world, or maybe even expressing feelings like pain or sorrow in paint. So I'm happy you came here today. That's it for me. Take care, everyone. And until next time, I hope you keep it colorful. Bye.